This is The Weekly Set, an official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com.
I wish I was the monster you think I am.
You have come here to beseech me?
Can't ask for your soul.
Madness can be a medicine for the modern world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of The Total Screen. I am your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at The Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So today we are going to be talking about the last two episodes of Season 2 of Amazon's superhero, what's the word I'm looking for? Deconstruction, The Boys.
Amazon's superhero blood orgy, The Boys.
Yeah. It's a deconstruction of superhero tropes in the same way like Watchmen was, you know? So, but we're going to be talking about Season 2. We're going to be talking about the last two episodes of Season 2, as well as just kind of our general impressions of the entire seasons now that it's over. We're going to be talking about Episode 7, Butcher, Baker, Candlestick Maker, and Episode 8, What I Know. This is Episode 276 of the podcast, and it is October 12th at the time of our recording. So let's get started. Let's talk about what's going on. We don't have to separate it by episodes. We can just kind of talk in general. I just kind of want to jump in to the end of Episode 7, because that played a huge part. So earlier in the season, we had a scene where the boys were talking to Susan Rayner, the deputy director of the CIA, and her head just fucking exploded.
Yeah, out of nowhere. It was a pretty intense moment. And throughout the season, the question became, one of the central questions then became, who was the head popper?
Yes.
Right? Initially, at first, I thought it was the soup terrorist, but then that got revealed to be Kamiko's brother. So it was not him. So, and then it just became like, there was no other good suspects until Cindy showed up at the mental asylum, the mental health clinic, I guess, the Vought underground superhero experiment place. She had powers that could easily do something like that.
Yeah.
So she became the next best suspect after the soup terrorist.
The only key difference is that she wasn't a precision instrument. She didn't blow up heads. She just blew up whole beings.
Yeah. We only ever saw her explode entire bodies. So we never saw her pop heads. So been this big mystery. Well, things are escalated this episode, in episode 7.
Yeah, there was a long built-to trial looking into Vought, and they had a star witness that was showing up there that was the guy that we'd seen in Season 1. He was the guy that was in charge of making Homelander, basically.
Expertly coerced into doing it by Billy, with some pretty overt threats to his family from Billy there.
Yeah, Billy went pretty dark to get him to...
He went pretty dark. That was a scene that showed like how nasty Billy can get, because you don't see that often in this show so far.
They want to remind you every so often that Billy's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, exactly. In some ways, Billy isn't much better than Homelander.
Yeah. So they get to that point. They have this guy who's going to be giving testimony against Vought, and you have the chairman of the council like putting the meeting to order and bringing him to the stand, and suddenly his head fucking explodes.
Not just his head.
Well, his is the first. The guy preceding the trial was first. Then immediately after, their star witness, his head explodes. And then it's just an orgy of head exploding. The only other two really relevant ones are AFOC, as I heard her called now, and now that's my favorite name for her, Victoria Newman. AFOC is her like lover who was with her. Her head exploded, and AOC had to be like dragged away by Grace
she had
Mallory.
to be dragged away by Grace Mallory. The one guy there, the speedster who was racing who raced A-Train and was supposed to be replacing him on the 7. His head exploded too.
So those are the only other two significant ones besides the head of the committee and the witness.
And there are some people suggesting that it was the Church of the Collective, the leader of the Church of Collective that was behind it, because the guy who replaced A-Train's head popped in there, but like, that's the only thing that points to that, and it's like, that's a room full of people's heads popping.
He had also said that he was having a meeting with Edgar. It was Stan Edgar of Vought. So to me, what it implied was that was like a condition of getting A-Train on the 7, or back on the 7.
That's a weird condition, though.
Was that they were going to kill off all the people that were in charge of that were going against them. They were going to ruin the case.
Yeah, that's true. That could have been.
And then he killed the other guy too to make it a reason for A-Train to have to be back on the 7. So that's what it seemed like to me. It seemed like, okay, this Alistar Adana had a meeting with Stan Edgar and they agreed upon this, and this is the result. So it's either Alistar himself or somebody in the Church of the Collective that has this ability that they used to do this, and that they apparently had connections before to do things.
We haven't been introduced to anybody else in the Church of the Collective. It's just been Alistar, and
we knew Eagle the Archer, who is apparently out of it now, and also Carol.
Yeah, he was apparently out. Oh yeah, Carol. I forgot all about Carol.
And then like the Deep's wife is a member. So we've gotten other members. But it's always been implied there's a lot more.
Well, yeah, obviously there's a lot more members. We just haven't been introduced. And it kind of, when you're setting up suspects, you want to introduce the characters at some point, If you're setting up like a good mystery, if you're setting up I don't give a shit, then sure, have the crimes be committed by somebody you never met and who just shows up at the reveal. Like surprise motherfuckers.
They also implied that Stormfront was at some point involved in the Church.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah. They did more. Yeah, they did more.
They implied initially, then they straight up said it.
That they straight up said it, yeah, because like her conversation with A-Train was like, oh yeah, that was before they started letting just anybody in. It's like it's like she implied that it was whites only, and she left when they started letting non-white people into the church.
Yeah, so our representative Nazi here.
Yeah,
Stormfront. But yeah, so basically that's how episode 7 ended, with all of these heads fucking exploding and us going like, who the fuck did this?
Yeah, that was the big holy shit moment of the season, the entire season. Like, if you're waiting for it, there it is. That was the boys' version of the Red Wedding.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing also is that, like, when this show was structured the way it was, where it was going to release week to week, instead of releasing all at once, and people were so upset about that. Boys fans were like review bombing it, which is so stupid, but they were like going after it. But the reason why is like, they were just saying, oh, this is because Amazon just wants to milk more money. It's like, then why do they only do that with this?
I heard that it was mostly because of COVID, mostly because when the show was premiering on Amazon, they did not have all the episodes finished shooting. So they had to they put the 3 episodes they completed on Amazon and continued shooting the other episodes on a week-to-week, as Amazon put it on a week-to-week basis to allow them to catch up.
See, I don't know about that because, for example, that scene at the very end of the last episode when Homelander like flies down and finds Stormfront dead in the end of the last episode was the very first scene of a trailer that came out for this season.
Well, I mean,
that came out like half a year ago.
Here's the thing about filming. Like, they could have filmed that scene.
You're talking about filming out of order. I know, but there was no implication that they filmed during COVID or even right before, that they had already finished all that before.
Well, here's the thing. No, you're not letting me finish. Here's the thing. They could have filmed everything, but the effects, some of the post-processing could have needed to be completed. They could have still needed to work on effects and everything. So that's what I heard. That's just what I heard. I'm not repeating theories. I'm repeating what I heard.
Yeah, but on the official, Eric Kripke said that the reason they did it was entirely because they wanted to have that water cooler moment for the show. So he said all of the episodes were big and they'd had big things, and he wanted to have like a week to digest those big things before they went on to the next episode so that they could like get discussion moving online and stuff. stuff, have people theorize and guess and talk about it. Basically, he wanted water cooler TV for this season. That's the official reasoning that was given. So people immediately assumed, oh, that's just a crock of shit. That's just Amazon giving an excuse or something. And if you watch, like, after the first 3 episodes and you watch, like, week to week, there weren't really a lot of big moments that are like, oh yeah, this needed to be here for like a water cooler TV moment. But after episode 7, I totally thought that. I was like, okay, I'm glad I have a week between episode 7 and 8, because that was such a huge scene. I didn't just want to jump in and find out what happened right away. You know, I wanted to like let that marinate for a bit. So I understood his reasoning there.
Oh yeah.
If you believe his reasoning, and I do. I think
it's a mix of both. I really do. I think it was just the situation and the fact that he's right. That it is better to have those water cooler moments. Mm-hmm. It is better to marinate on who did this instead of like binging the whole thing and being like, oh yeah, it's Victoria Newman.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't get to go back to, the problem with that is then after you don't get to go back to your friends and be like, oh my God, who do you think it is? Because even if you didn't binge it all at once, it's most likely one of your friends did. And it's like, yeah, well, I already know. And it's like, well, good for you, I guess.
Exactly.
And I lamented to you earlier the fact that we are doing these episodes in the same podcast because of the same reason. It's like, now we're doing the podcast, so we're covering episode 7, and we know, right? I can't sit here and speculate anymore. Like, that would have been so exciting to do on the podcast, but
our podcasts were already structured out before that. You know, we didn't know that there was going to be a huge thing at the end of episode 7.
Right, exactly. And that's what you lose when you have stuff released all once in a big chunk. It's also, like I've said, it's also one reason I think Lost is so successful.
Yes.
We did the rewatch of Lost, where we basically binged it. And I gotta be honest, I thought Lost was more intriguing when you had to wait a week to find out what was happening. Because of the way it was structured. It was structured for that week. The mysteries were structured for that week to week. They want you to go to the water cooler and start throwing out your theories, you know?
Well, here's the thing. It's like, some people take, like, I think a lot of people take like an absolutist position, either in favor of binging or in favor of week to week. Like, some people are like, oh, it should all be binging, and some people are like, oh, it should all be week to week. I've always maintained that, like, it's a case by case basis. Some things are fine to just binge, and some things you want time to digest, and you want to have like that space between episodes and stuff to do that. You know, it's always been case to case. I think Lost is interesting because it's kind of both. Like, there's something you get out of it by watching it week to week and discussing it and stuff as it originally aired. That was a huge part of the show. But
that was
also, like,
part of the experience.
It moves so quick that it's like an easy binge at the same time, you know?
True. Yeah, it is. It is a pretty easy binge. You just don't get to binging it. You don't get to ruminate on the mysteries so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We've talked about the same phenomenon with, like, Westworld, for example, where, like, we've always watched that week to week, except for the last season, which you and I both kind of didn't pay attention to until it was all done.
Yeah, I binged it because, I didn't watch the episodes when they were coming out.
Yeah.
And, I don't know.
But before that, there was a big topic of discussion where some people that were watching it week to week for the first 2 seasons were complaining about, like, just how it was kind of meandering and things weren't moving and stuff. But then people who binged it, like, loved it and were saying, like, oh, everything's there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, maybe we're going to have this experience now that we're going to be binging the 3rd season, where before we had watched week to week. And we didn't really get that. But then at the same time, the other people who'd binged the first 2 seasons also didn't get the same thing. So it was like a weird coincidence that the season we didn't binge also just happened to be the one that was just kind of sloppy, period.
Yeah, it was kind of, I mean, I would definitely be more frustrated with it if I didn't binge it. Gotta be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't binge the first 2. I watched the first 2 episodes when they came out. It's just after that, like, I was kind of like, I was, we were watching other things. I don't know where we were at that time, but we were doing other things, and I was kind of feeling like, I watched episode 2, and I'm kind of feeling, I felt like the former group, I felt like this is slow and plotting, and I'm not really into it.
Yeah, same here.
And, once I picked it back up and binged it from episode 3 onward, then it got better, but that's just because, like, the pace of the show itself didn't get better. It's just that I was able to go to the next episode and wait. So, yeah, I mean, it really, like, that's another aspect to it, is if a show is better binging or if it's better watching weekly, and that all depends on how the show is structured, how the writing is structured. Something like Westworld, I think, is not structured in the way that a weekly show should be structured, because everything gets so drawn out, the way they write that.
Yeah, like I think pretty much anything Lindelof has worked on, like, works really well week to week. He's really good at structuring surprises at the end of episodes and things like that, He's really good at just dropping a what the fuck moment in, and you need to kind of like watch that and think about it and let it marinate and talk about it and stuff instead of just moving on to the next episode. But I think a lot of people, it leans more towards like binging is probably better.
Right.
I mean, like, I think I'm glad Hannibal came out week to week, because
it's interesting, because the whole thing is interesting to me, because I think Netflix and our streaming services, I think, have conditioned people. I'm from an era, I grew up with weekly television.
Week to week was the only way. There was no other way.
Yeah, there was no other way. There wasn't like, like ABC didn't say, watch everything right now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm used to it. That's how I grew up. So it does not bother me to watch a show that's week to week. It really doesn't. But people got super pissed about The Boys. Like, they review bombed the hell out of the show. And I don't think that's not fair to Eric Kripke. That's not fair to the actors who work so hard on the show.
Yeah.
It's so
it's
petulant.
Bullshit.
It's, what it is. It's this bullshit culture of instant gratification that we find ourselves in.
Yeah. And to move on to back to The Boys and what that means, like, I think that when they divided it up the way they did, I think it was what Eric Kripke was talking about. I don't think that they needed to do what they did with the whole season. They kind of just needed really a break between episodes 7 and 8 more than anything else. Maybe a few others would be okay, but that would have been really weird if they said, like, okay, here's the whole season except the finale, and then we're going to release the finale next week or something. That would have been super weird for them to do that, So they had to, like, break it up. So they had to say, okay, what's a good number to give up front? And they said, 3. That's almost half the season. Then we'll, like, drop them week to week after that. So I think it kind of came to be, the release structure for season 2 came to be because they wanted a break, particularly between episodes 7 and 8. They needed that break. And in order to facilitate that in a way that made sense, they had to do it the way they did it. Because it would have been, like, super weird if they gone, here's the whole series except one episode.
That would have been super weird,
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's what ended up happening. So when people had doubts, like, oh, you said this was because of this, but clearly I'm not seeing that. Well, it's like, it's not exactly just because of that. There's things that factor in that they had to pay attention to. But if Eric Kripke didn't need that break between 7 and 8, it probably would have been released all at once. That's what I'm saying. I think it totally would have been released all at once. So it was just a matter of like a lot of the shit was done, they were filming season 2 before season 1 came out. Like, they were really early on the ball to filming this show. So it's, I don't know, like, that's just the way I feel. I'm hoping this means that we're going to get season 2 soon, but because of COVID, we're probably going to get season 2 even later. Cause I don't think they've even started filming it yet. And now they're not going to be able to.
You mean season 3?
Season 3, yes. Sorry.
I don't know when they're gonna get season 3 out. Obviously, they thought about season 3. They've cast Jensen Ackles as Soldier Boy.
Yeah.
They've already made like a major casting decision.
And there's a really sad thing too, which is that they also cast in an unknown cameo role. They cast the actor who played Jensen Ackles' dad in Supernatural, which Eric Kripke was the showrunner for. So that's why there's such a Supernatural supernatural connection in the series, but they cast him as well. He was going to show up in some cameo role, and that might not happen now because of COVID, because it was such a small cameo role, and because the actor is in The Walking Dead now, where he plays Negan, and there's shows kind of films around the same time. It would have been a really quick thing to do to just go, okay, here, take a flight out to Toronto, film for like a day, and then take your flight back and go back to The Walking Dead. That would have been an easy thing to do. Not now. And because of the conditions now, it's looking like that might not happen. And that's really sad. That's really upsetting.
Right.
But that's just the state of COVID. And we'll move on from that because we're going to talk about that in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we're going to be talking a lot about the state of how COVID has affected the entertainment industry and shows that we've been looking forward to, that some of them have just been outright canceled now. Glow being an example of that. We're going to talk about that in 2 weeks. But let's get back on topic with the boys, because this is, I brought us way off topic here.
Yeah, you kind of went a bit far afield.
But anyways, we were talking about the head explosion scene in episode 7 of season 2. We eventually got the very, very end. I think it might have been the last scene or one of the last scenes of the season finale. We found out that it was AFOC, that Victoria Newman, that was the head popper all along. And that makes sense because Vada's been talking that their goal was to have a soup in the White House, and here's a promising politician.
So she may be a Vought mole. We don't know. Some people are disappointed because people take this as a commentary on AOC herself, which I don't see it that way. I mean, we don't know where they're going with this character to begin with.
I don't think that's what they intended.
We don't know where they're going with this character in season 3. I would say wait for season 3. I don't think Eric Kripke is a liberal guy. You know, like everything about the show.
There's a lot of anti-conservative stuff in this season.
Yeah, everything about the show is pro-liberal. I don't think Eric Kripke would just dunk on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for no reason. You know, I gotta trust his intentions here with this.
Maybe he knows something we don't.
Maybe.
AOC can pop heads.
In real life.
Yes. I think there's a certain point where, like, yes, you put in some political commentary in a show, but there's a certain point at which it's like, no, you're just making an exciting plot element at this point.
Right.
Like, this isn't for the sake of commentary. Just because we put some commentary in doesn't mean everything we put in is commentary, you know? It makes sense with the storyline that, you know, you have this promising political figure and she's connected to Vought. And we don't even know if she's connected to Vought now, but that seems to very much be the case, you know? That's what it seems like to me, at least. That, you know, this is part of Stan Edgar's plan. But that's not necessarily apparent, I guess.
Right.
So let's talk about some other things that happened in these 2 episodes. Lamplighter. So, we talked about Lamplighter before when they had captured him, when he basically was volunteering to let Grace kill him. He was like, you can do me a favor.
Yeah, so basically, Lamplighter was supposed to be their star witness. Mm-hmm. And apparently, then everybody had to leave. Like, Bill Butcher got, like, a call from his mom. And that leads to some interesting personal character drama with Billy Butcher that people didn't really talk about, but it's like, I like how the show, like, the episode before that really fleshed out Frenchie a lot, and this kind of fleshes out Billy's and his backstory a bit more, you know?
Yeah, like, definitely. Having
Billy, like, confront his, like, abusive, I guess, stepfather?
I think it's his blood father. I think it's his actual father.
Okay. Some of the dialogue made me think, like, maybe he wasn't, like, his blood father, but...
I think he was, but it was Walter from Fringe.
Yeah, it was Walter from Fringe, yeah. It's so, you know, you got, like, really good scene with Billy dealing with that, but while that's going on, they leave Huey to babysit Lamplighter, basically. And Lamplighter, it's hilarious, too, because Lamplighter's watching, like, all this, like, porn parodies of the 7.
Yeah. Black noir, like, you know.
Big black noir.
Yeah.
I forgot the titles of the other ones, but like,
God, one was like A-Train and Starlight.
yeah.
Like paired, and Huey was like, no.
Yeah, he was like, no. And like Eric Kripke, actually, I don't know if he was joking, but he said on Twitter that like they filmed like full sex scenes for that. And I'm like, although it's hard to tell if that was a joke or not, but that's what he posted on Twitter. But basically, what happens in the episode is Starlight gets captured. Like Black Noir, gasses her and they detain her in the 7 building, at Vought. Basically under the orders of Homelander and Stormfront.
Set up, unintentionally by her mother.
Yes, set up unintentionally by her mother. So what happens is Huey learns about it from the news, and he immediately is like, oh my God, I gotta do something. I gotta save Starlight. And he convinces Lamplighter to help him break into, Vought Tower is the name of the place.
Using terms from the pornography he's watching, which is great.
Yes.
He's like, are you gonna be the cuck that sits around and just watches? Are you gonna get out there? Are you gonna be the one that fucks?
Yeah. I like Lamplighter's response, because he's like, I may be a cuck, but you're worse than a cuck.
Yeah, you're a fluffer.
Yeah, you're a fluffer. Yeah.
But yeah, he finally got Lamplighter to go to help him save him. Lamplighter's handprint was still in the system, so they were able to get up in the building. And then they walk by the room where they have the statues of the 7. And he was like, why are we going this way? I thought, where were you supposed to get her? And he's like, they took my statue. And he was like, well, who cares about that? How are we going to get Starlight out of here? And he's like, I wanted to do this in front of my statue. And then he set himself on fire and just torched himself, which caused safety initiatives to kick in the building. It opened up, it reduced the power dampener that was holding Starlight in place, allowing her to escape. And so he basically allowed, Starlight to get out of there and everything.
Yeah. He basically, with his action, even though that wasn't the intent, he just wanted to end himself in front of the statue, because
we saw in the last episode he was willing to die at Grace's hands, and she didn't do it because Frenchie.
Right.
So yeah.
This is the part where we find out Black Noir's big weakness.
Yeah, because when Huey and Starlight are about to kind of escape, Black Noir shows up.
I don't think, no, that's before.
Oh, Starlight wasn't there yet, yeah.
Yeah, Starlight escapes and she runs out into, the foyer where, the statue and where Lamplighter killed himself. And she sees, his body, and then Black Noir shows up.
Huey's found Starlight's mom at this point.
Yes, he's with Starlight's mom.
He was, looking for Starlight, ended up finding her mom.
He uses Lamplighter's hand. He actually, cuts off his hand and uses it to unlock the cell holding Starlight's mom. And then he grabs her and he starts to he's still looking for Starlight's cell at that point.
Yeah, that's right. And so Starlight's there by the statues where Lamplighter killed himself, and Black Noir comes out and starts attacking her.
Yeah, he's beating her up, but then out of nowhere, Queen Maeve gives an assist to Starlight, and Queen Maeve knows Black Noir's big weakness.
Yeah, she pulls back his mask and stuffs an almond joy in his mouth.
Yes, that's why you got that scene earlier where Black Noir was looking for Billy, and the computer tech, the girl, she was eating an almond joy, and he was motioning her to get rid of it.
It also plays into the whole scene with Huey and Starlight talking about their favorite candies and stuff.
So that's right.
This is a lot of candy set up in this season.
No, all I got out of this season is Eric Kripke hates almond joy.
Yeah.
At least now I know
right to hate it.
Now at least I know what not to get Eric Kripke for Halloween.
Eric Kripke does not feel like a nut. So Almond Joy is the true villain of the boys.
Yes.
2. So yeah, Queen Maeve shoves an Almond Joy into Black Noir's mouth, incapacitating him. He tries to use, God, I can't remember what the shot's called now.
Oh yeah, it's for allergies.
Yeah, my mom
But
has
she
one of
can-
those. I just can't
but she
remember
can-
what it's called.
EpiPen. I think it is.
He's trying to use an EpiPen. Epinendra, I can't remember what the actual thing's called, but EpiPen,
okay.
yes. But anyways, he tries to use an EpiPen and she knocks it away from him and he basically goes unconscious. Seemingly maybe dead.
He's not dead because Homelander says as much in the
next episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to us, after watching that first episode, after watching episode 7, I mean, seemingly dead at that point.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes dead. Because he wasn't in the courtroom scene when all the heads were exploding. He wasn't there. So, it was, implied that he was not all better, basically. Whatever the case may be.
Eric Kripke does say he will be back in season 3. So
yeah. There's a chance though, because in the comics, they can use Compound V on supers that have died.
Oh, really?
And it kind of brings them back, but they're kind of like almost like zombies.
Oh, wow.
Like they're kind of mindless. So they come back, but they're kind of just on instinct and mindless. So that could be the case with when we see him again.
So this is what Eric Kripke said about Black Noir on Twitter, Twitter Q&A. He said Black Noir will be back in season 3 and might have the opportunity to lose the mask. Yes.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. Black Noir had a very different look. We've seen a little bit of beneath his mask, and it's clearly not what was in the comics.
Right. We've seen it could still be true to the comics version, but we see we got the impression that he had a burnt face, almost like a Deadpool style look under there. You don't see it much, but it definitely looked like he was burnt up.
Yeah, but it wasn't just burnt up. I mean, he was dark-skinned, clearly.
Yeah,
even besides the burn,
Right.
Which in the comics, that's something very different than that.
Oh, yeah. I know it is in the comics.
Yeah. So it seems like they've moved away from that, which is probably a good idea. Because
I think that's a good idea.
Get rid of the twist people know and give us a new one.
Yeah, definitely.
What else was big in episode 7?
No, that's the big points in episode 7. Then episode 8 was the crazy episode. This was basically the downfall of Stormfront. The head popper storyline went back to the back burner on this.
Yeah, until the end of the episode.
Until the end of the episode, we got something. It's interesting because this episode feels like it could serve as a series finale if they needed it to. It wraps up all the plot lines pretty much, except for one.
It wraps up the plot lines while opening up a few new threads to see where things could go from here. And that's what makes it not a series finale, but it could work as a series finale if the show had been canceled or something. But by the time they were filming that, at that point, they already knew that they were a huge hit.
Yeah, they knew.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's interesting because it seems like they're setting up the show to go in a slightly different direction.
Mm-hmm. Which is good because things need to change, you can't just have the same thing repeat itself over and over.
Right. It's interesting. So basically what happens is this episode centers more around Homelander, Stormfront, and Ryan, Homelander's son.
There is something we didn't mention from the last episode that we got to mention right now.
What is it?
It has to do with those three, and it's because Homelander basically revealed to Ryan that his mom had been lying to him.
That's right.
And got Ryan to turn on his mom, and then they took him and left.
That's right.
Now his mom's hysterical.
That did happen in episode 7. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, and so that leads into kind of what's happening in episode 8.
That's the problem when we do this. It's stuff in my mind bleeds together. So I was thinking that was episode 8.
No, yeah, that was episode 7, and then episode 8 starts off with Homelander and Stormfront and Ryan are all together, and Homelander doesn't really know what to do with Ryan. He's just kind of mostly keeping him with Ashley, the publicist for the 7, is kind of babysitting him basically, as Stormfront and Homelander are doing their own things. So he doesn't really know what to do with him. He tries to take him out to go to a 7 themed restaurant, like a Planet Hollywood style thing, but 7, the 7. It just doesn't go well. Ryan's about to lose control of his powers. He's overwhelmed. He's never been around a big group of people before, especially with them all taking pictures of them and stuff because of Homelander and Stormfront. And Homelander ends up kind of taking him away. Even has kind of a sweet moment with him where he's talking about the first time time he felt overwhelmed by people and how he cried as a child. So it's like showing like even Homelander can have some level of humanity.
Yeah.
And talking about that, relating that to Ryan. He can't do it fully though, because even though he's like, yes, I cried, he's like, but I'm a man now, so I don't really anymore. So he can't like fully commit to being vulnerable, but he does that little bit at least. While that's happening, Ryan's mom tracks down Billy and is desperate to get her son back. And that kind of takes the turn of what's happening in this season.
Yeah, that kind of takes the turn. I mean. Because it's funny too, because like at the beginning of the episode, like at that point, like Billy and the rest of the crew, they're like talking about like how they're gonna kill all the Supes.
Yeah.
And like Huey is like, no, you can't just what are you doing? You can't just go on a murder spree.
He's like, you can't kill them all. And then immediately after saying that, like Kamiko walks by and like holding like a bazooka.
Yeah.
It was just like a really well comedically timed moment. But it was, yeah, like that was basically their plan. And then Starlight and Huey are like, no, give us just a little bit of time. We'll figure something out. And they go to see Maeve. And Maeve's like, no, fuck off. Haven't I done enough? I saved your life.
Right. I saved your life. But I don't want.
Calls Huey a twink.
Yes, calls Huey a twink. And she's like, I could split him like a timber or something, you know?
She's just like constantly harassing him the whole time. But yeah, she just says she's not going to do anything to help. So they're on their way back and they're kind of depressed and going like, oh, I guess we do have to try to kill them all now. What else are we going to be able to do? And then A-Train just kind of blasts into their car.
That was a great scene. He said something like, sup, bitches?
Yeah.
Or something like
And they almost get into a car accident. Yeah. Like, holy shit. They finally,
A-Train has a whole big file on Stormfront that he got from the Church of the Collective.
Yeah, he overheard Edgar and Stan Edgar and Alistar talking about repopulating the Seven, and basically there were two key points. One was that they couldn't bring back two members; they could only bring back one, because if they brought back two, that would be considered weakness. Yeah,
he said two would be considered weakness, and then they said like Edgar said they couldn't bring back A-Train because Stormfront doesn't like him, you know. And then like Alistair just says like, so what's their problem with A-Train? And Edgar's like, you know what her problem is.
Yeah,
it's like don't pretend, like you know what's going on. And A-Train apparently, don't kid a kidder. And A-Train obviously overheard that conversation and put two and two together, you know.
Yeah, he'd already been harassed by Stormfront before.
Yeah, he'd already been harassed by Stormfront before, so he knew exactly what was going on. So,
and this kind of brings up the real purpose of the Fresca cult, and that's that, like the Church of Scientology is rumored to have, the Church of the Collective has detailed files like blackmail folders on a ton of supers, apparently.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like the secret to their power, because they have this blackmail material, you know? And A-Train ends up going into the archives and gets out Stormfront's file and ends up giving this to Starlight and Huey. And he says, now we're even, bitch.
Yep. He's like, wow, where do you, and he's like, no, you did not get this from me. Okay. You got the shit on your own.
Yeah. And so they bring this back to,
and then A-Train's like, fuck that Nazi bitch.
Yeah. So they bring this information back to Billy, who has now made his own plan. Like, while they were on their way back, he went out to see Stan Edgar himself and made a deal with Stan Edgar, basically like betraying his wife and saying that he was gonna make it so that that Vought could capture Ryan, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
And that, you know, he was gonna use that as leverage to keep his wife with him. So he was just going really dark there.
Yeah,
But using this as the deal to kind of, to have Vought help him save Ryan and try to, as a way to get back with his wife by doing this.
Not save Ryan, but basically Billy wants his wife back, and that's all he cares about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's using Vought in this rescue mission on Ryan to make his wife see that he did everything he could and that so she'll be with him again.
Right.
So it's all like for that purpose. And Stan Edgar agrees. He even talks freely about the whole Stormfront issue, you know, about who she is and saying like that that she's necessary. Like, I don't have the privilege to be angry and righteous like you do, meaning because he's black, that he doesn't have that privilege to be that way.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, when he gets back from that meeting, when Billy gets back from that meeting, the whole group's there. They've all gotten to know his wife. They're all nothing but smiles, which is making him uncomfortable because they're happy to see this other side of Billy, his wife. Huey's like, oh yeah, I talked to your wife. Yeah, she's great. And he's just like, Billy's like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
But Huey shows him the file that they got on Stormfront, and he's like, this is good. He's like, this is like a slam dunk, And so they use this as part of their plan to get Ryan, because they just say, okay, we're gonna leak this, but we're gonna strategically leak it so that she's out of the picture when they want to make their move. So they leak all that information. It very quickly becomes memeified. Stormfront, Hitler's star, run her over with a car.
Oh, yeah.
Did you notice the car that ran her over in the animation was the Impala from Supernatural?
Oh, yeah.
Another little Supernatural connection there. They use that, they get her distracted from it, and then they set up these kind of like sonic devices that they get from Vought that are just gonna fuck with somebody who has like super sensitive hearing, like Homelander or Ryan. This sends Homelander out looking for these things to stop him, and Ryan's kind of curled up in a corner, and then they go in and they grab Ryan and they get him out of there.
Yeah, this is the big finale to the season here. It's where Butcher is grabbing Ryan and the boys, and Starlight are out there, and Stormfront shows up, and then they get into the big brawl with Stormfront.
I was going to say, even before that, an important thing is that Billy leaves the communicator behind the phone that he had that was going to give Vought the location of Ryan. And so basically Billy changed his mind to do the right thing. And he's even before Stormfront shows up to confront them again, Billy's telling his wife, leave without me. I'm going to distract them. I can't go with you because I can't promise that I'm going to always be good to Ryan, that I'm going to end up getting my darkness on Ryan. And so you need to go without me. I realize that now. It's basically the same thing she said to him when she said she couldn't be with him. But he's saying that he realizes that now, and that he's so he's giving her that out. And she's like, well, you did the right thing. And after he confesses that he was going to sell him out, and he says, yeah, but I might not do it again.
Right.
And so he's given them an out. It's Mother's Milk, Becca and Ryan are in an SUV, and they're taking off. Stormfront lands in front of them and sends the car flying.
Yes.
Thankfully, all three of them are fine. They get out of the car, but now starts kind of the battle between Stormfront and the boys.
Girls really do get it done.
Yeah. This is a great scene because it starts off with I love it because they had a moment before where Frenchie was talking to Kimiko, and she was like, what if I lose control again? What if I don't know what to do? And he's like, you're strong. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. So when Stormfront is facing them off, Kimiko just starts laughing.
Yeah, she starts laughing, and then she signs, and then Frenchie is like to Stormfront. Frenchie goes, she said she's gonna stick her boot up your kitty.
And so Starlight and Kimiko, and they're both fighting Stormfront together, and it's going okay. It's an okay fight going at first, but then Stormfront starts kind of taking control, starts blowing everybody back, blows up their other escape vehicle with all of the ammo and RPGs that they had in their car, just destroys everything that they had as a contingency to deal with supers. And so Stormfront's now controlling the fight. She breaks Kimiko's neck, thinking she's killed her.
Oh my god, that got me for
Wolverine.
Got me for a second, and I'm wait, no, Kimiko's Wolverine, she's fine.
Yeah, Kimiko's Wolverine, as long as there's enough of her there, she'll regenerate, So while Kimiko's down and Starlight's getting her ass kicked, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Maeve shows up.
Yes.
Says, you kraut bitch or something. Just starts kicking her ass. And then
Deus Ex Maeve.
Yeah. Deus Ex Maeve comes to save the day. And then
that's when
they
you
have
get
a moment where all three of them get back up, because it's Maeve's there fighting, Starlight's still in there fighting, and then Kimiko snaps her neck back into place.
Up, and they all start just pounding on Stormfront, basically overwhelming her to the point where Stormfront runs away from the fight entirely.
There's a panel in the comics where this is happening with the boys beating up some super, and
Yeah.
it's the boys, and it's another super I think is involved in it too. I think it's a love sausage is actually
Like-
beating up the person too, but it's like there's
Like-
like a panel just like that, but it's not the girls. It's all like these
Right.
boys. So they kinda
I
do like
I
a-
love, yeah, they kind of, well, I love it because it's a, like Frenchie says, Frenchie makes it explicit, but it's a callback to earlier in the season when they were doing the Doofy movie, and they had like the marketing tagline, girls get it done,
yeah, which
you
was
know.
in turn like a spoof of the Avengers.
which in turn was
Scene,
the spoof
Avengers
of the
Endgame.
scene. But they had that girls get it done, and then this scene happens, and Frenchie's just like, girls really do get it done.
And so yeah, the girls are just kicking Stormfront's ass to the point that she has to like escape. And so
Yes.
she uses her lightning and a boost to like just get the fuck out of there.
She's immediately heads to weaker, more easy to overpower targets.
Yeah. We should cut back into what Homelander's up to now. Cause
Yeah,
he's
Homelander knows something's up now. He saw like all the sound devices.
all labeled
which have-
bot. Yeah.
Yeah, all labeled Vought. So he knows that Vought is up to something that he doesn't like.
And the Vought's soldiers, they all go into the cabin and it's empty and they're calling out for Butcher. They're like, Butcher, where's the boy? Butcher. And then Homelander was like behind them, closes the door and says, did I hear you say Butcher?
Yeah, yeah. And then he murders all the soldiers.
Yeah.
You know, intense scene, you know, like.
We
like,
see him
like-
kill one right away, and then like later on, we see him walk out of the cabin just soaked in blood.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
like who knows, like what the fuck he did to them there, you know? We know he killed him, but who knows, like what he did, you know? Probably nothing pleasant. And well, so that's happening. That's where Homelander is. Meanwhile, Becca and Billy and Ryan are all running off through the woods to get away, and Stormfront cuts them off and starts like attacking Becca. Becca gets a nice shot on her eye, takes out one of Stormfront's eyes. But Stormfront's like basically holding Becca against a tree, like choking the life out of her. Ryan's like crying. He doesn't know what he can do. And Billy is like hitting Stormfront in the back with like a crowbar, and it's doing nothing.
Right.
It's like there's just nothing he can do. And he's like desperately trying to like do
He's
anything he can.
he's powerless in that moment, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
And this goes back to, there was a scene where Homelander was trying to train Ryan earlier in the episode to use like his heat
powers.
vision, and he couldn't. And there was a moment where he said, just imagine somebody you really hate. That works for me. And Ryan says, I don't hate anybody.
And then Stormfront brings up white genocide and
even Homelander was like giving kind of a what the fuck face.
yeah. Homelander immediately gives like this what the fuck look, you know? Yeah.
He's like, you need to learn how to do this because people want to hurt us just for the color of our skin. It's called white genocide.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So, but this calls back to now Stormfront's like killing his mom in front of him.
Yes.
Like ruthlessly. And he just finally freaks out and you see his eyes start to glow and you just see like a burst of light.
You see a burst of light.
We don't really see exactly what happens.
Right. That's not on purpose because they don't want you to see what happens. But, you know, when it comes back, you kind of, if you're seasoned in watching television, you can kind of guess what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we end up seeing the result, and it's Stormfront laying on the ground, sans limbs, burnt to a crisp, and just speaking softly in German.
Right.
Just like
That's-
in complete shock.
That's what you expect to happen. But there's another thing that happened that maybe you could have guessed, maybe you couldn't have guessed. I guessed it.
I think it seemed pretty obvious that something was going to go really wrong from that laser
Yeah.
blast. Also, it was a very powerful, out of control laser blast.
Because they cut away, you know, like, exactly. You know, if they cut away, then something bad happened.
They also showed throughout the season, they showed kind of like mishaps of laser blast, even with Homelander doing it.
Yeah, even with Homelander doing it. Yeah. And so the thing is, like, Ryan didn't manage to just fry Stormfront. He also managed to slice open Becca's neck from the look of it.
Yeah.
And this leads to like a very dramatic scene, you know, where Ryan is like basically crying, you know, and Becca, with her final words, is pleading for Homelander to take care of the kid and to not let him become another Homelander when all Butcher wants to do is grab a crowbar and bash the kid's skull in.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, once she dies, you can see just kind of the rage take over on his face.
Yeah, you can see the rage take
his
over.
crowbar and he starts walking, but then Homelander shows up.
He's only stopped by Homelander showing up at that moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is, like I said, this was the shot of Homelander flying in was literally the first shot of the first trailer for this season that leaked like half a year ago. That was like such a cool shot of him just kind of like out of focus floating down into the forest. And you saw it in the trailer. It was like, oh, why is he so fucked up? Like he's covered in blood and he looks like emotionally fucked up. Like he's really sad. And now we know what that was. That was him seeing Stormfront in that state, you know? So he had genuine feelings for the Nazi bitch. And he's sad to see her, and then he sees kind of everything that's going on, and he's like kind of angry at Ryan too, but like he is angry, but he's like, you know, come with me, Ryan. And Butcher ends up standing in front of Ryan and saying like, no. Homelander's like, why do you care? You know, she's dead. And Butcher said that he made a promise. And this is like, I think seeing Homelander is what made up his mind. Like he was like torn between, you know, upholding his wife's dying wish and killing Ryan because he killed, you know, his wife.
Right.
And this is like seeing Homelander come down has like made his decision for him that he's going to protect this boy. And so, he does. And like Homelander's like, okay, well, here it goes. You're going to die for nothing. And he's going to start walking towards him. And then Maeve tells him to stop. And she uses the blackmail footage that she had before of, you know, from the plane crash from the first season. And she's saying, if you hurt me, or my wife, or you hurt them, you don't let them go, then I'm going to release this to the press and it'll be over for you. And he's like, well, if you do that, I'm going to kill everyone. She said, as long as nobody loves you anymore. And that kind of cements the point, is that's what Homelander cares about. Homelander wants to be loved.
Right, exactly. That's
and the idea of being a pariah to the entire world is something he can't stomach. So he lets them go. And, you think it looks like now it looks like, Butcher's gonna be raising Ryan, but he doesn't. He gives him over to, Grace, which is kind of sad because it's kind of like he's just letting him go. Like he's just like, it makes it uncertain. Like, is Ryan gonna end up being another Homelander? He's, you know, now he's got nobody that cares about him again, you know? But Butcher gives him one last piece of advice. And he says, what did I tell you? And the boy said, don't be a cunt.
Yeah, don't be a cunt. That was great. He hands Ryan over to Grace Mallory, and basically she discusses with Billy that they're going to make the boys an official, government recognized unit.
Mm-hmm.
And
that they're all free. That all the charges have been dropped.
Yeah, she said she managed to get all the charges dropped. They're all free, and this leads to the ending where we see the boys kind of go their separate ways. You know, Mother's Milk gets to go back to his family. Huey does something we'll touch upon in a moment. You know, they kind of go their separate ways.
Frenchie and Kimiko go dancing.
Yes, Frenchie and Kimiko go dancing. It's kind of a happy ending for the boys, which is unexpected for this show. It's not gonna last. It's not the end of the series. But
Huey talks to Starlight.
For this moment, it's a happy ending.
Yeah. Huey's talking to Starlight and is saying that he kind of wants to stand on his own 2 feet. So he doesn't want to be with the boys anymore. He wants to...
He makes it sound like he's breaking up.
Yeah, and so she's
Starlight.
like, okay, well, I guess we can still be friends. And he's like, oh, no. Like, no, I'll desperately cling on to you. That's one thing I'm still going to cling on to.
That's the thing I'm still going to cling on to. Right, and then we get that wonderful, Homelander briefly mentioned that Stormfront is still alive, being detained in a secure facility. Because of blackmail, Starlight gets her spot back on the 7.
It was a great scene as it's zooming in on his face as he's like apologizing to Starlight and Maeve and saying,
yes.
And you just see like his sociopathic eyes as it's zooming in. Like he just looks more and more deranged the more it zooms in on his face.
He is not happy.
Yeah.
But then we get this great scene with Homelander, basically on top of a building in New York City, just jerking off to like the city, like just yelling like, I can do whatever I want, you know,
Yeah.
which was a scene apparently like Eric Kripke filmed for season 1 because it was supposed to come after an argument with,
Stillwell?
yeah, it was supposed to come after an argument with Stillwell. That scene was supposed to happen, but Amazon told him that was too risque for their service, and they asked him to cut it.
And then the show became like a massive hit.
Well, apparently in the Q&A on Twitter, Eric Kripke said Amazon approached him and asked him, you know, if he could make Homelander crazier this season, you know, if they could do, if he could do something really crazy with Homelander, and he was
said,
like,
you mean jerking off on the top of a building?
Yeah. And he's like, well, I have that scene, and they're like, do it.
So they put in that scene, where Homelander jerks off over the city.
Yeah.
And then they also, we see what we had mentioned before, that AFOC is the head popper. We learned that after...
We learned that after Alistair's head gets popped.
Yeah.
She's talking to Alistair on...
Well, first it's great because Alistair says, like, A-Train, we got you back in the boys, and A-Train and the Deep are all celebrating. And then he's also, well, sorry, Deep, you're not in. And Deep's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
He's like, fuck you, fuck Fresca.
He's like, yeah, fuck you, fuck Fresca. And then Alistair's like, you know, Deep, I think you are a toxic personality.
And then later on, AFOC is talking on the phone to Alistair.
They're apparently making plans, right?
Yeah, like she's gonna give him tax exempt status for his church, and
that he was gonna make some deal with her, even though we know already that he was dealing with Edgar. So we're like, oh, there's some double dealing going on with the church. He's trying to play both sides. And then we find out
he's so satisfied with himself, and he leans back in his chair and pops a Fresca, and his head blows up.
Yes.
The goriest head blow up, we see like blood spurting from the neck, and it's like, it's really gross.
And then we find out it was her who was doing the head poppings all along.
Yeah.
And then to put an exclamation point on it, Huey joins her campaign.
Yeah, Huey shows up. It kind of follows her after she blows up his head, and she's walking into her campaign office and talking to everybody. And then it said, oh, somebody's here for you or something, and it's Huey. And she's like, kind of like, at first she's looking kind of suspicious, like it's looking like almost like she's getting ready to kill him.
Yeah.
Like she's like, why are you here or something? And he's like, I need to stand on my own from the boys, and I still want to fight Vought, but I want to do it the right way.
Right.
And so he joins her campaign.
Yes. So we're going to have to see where that goes in season 3.
Yeah, that'll be what we'll have to see with what's going on. But like, we got like a lot of closure this season in this finale.
A lot of closure, yeah.
But at the same time, we got a big setup now because, you know, Homelander is no longer like a huge threat. You know, Billy's wife is no longer his motivating factor.
Billy doesn't seem like he has a motivating factor anymore.
Mother's Milk is able to leave again and go back to his family. Frenchie and Kimiko are able to kind of start up a relationship and move on. So all of these things have kind of moved past, and Huey's left the boys, and he's now going to, you know, work on this campaign. But then you have this big setup of like, oh, this seems like, and this is why I said earlier, like it seems like it's implied that this is all part of Vought. Like this is all part of Vaught's plan. That the AFOC is part of Vaught's plan as well, you know? That's not explicitly stated. That might not be the case. But that's what it seems like, because we know that they wanted to get a super in the White House. We know that was their end goal. And so this seems like, okay, well, this is their plan. This is clearly their plan, you know?
Well, we know that the character that she's based on, the comic book version, Victor Newman, ends up becoming president. In the comics. We don't know if that's where she's going to end up as well, because this isn't necessarily following the comics, but it's something to point out, I feel.
Yeah. So definitely. So this is kind of taking us in a new direction. And I like this because if they had just done another season where the boys are on the run, where Homelander's like the main antagonist against them, where if they had just kept up this continuing thing, I think it would have started to get less interesting.
It would get stale fast. I like that they're switching it up, you know, you have to do that.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to see kind of where this is going to go now with season 3, which is like one of those things that I think it's confirmed already. Season 3, even if it isn't, there's no way we're not going to get a season 3. This is by far Amazon's biggest hit right now. I mean, it might not be once like Lord of the Rings and Wheel of Time come out and stuff. Those are like huge budget Game of Thrones level shows that Amazon's making. But right now, this is by far their biggest show. Like, this is bigger than Jack Ryan, which is the one they bet big on before. So yeah.
Yeah. Jack Ryan was the one they expected to be big. This is the one that got big.
Yeah. Like right now, like if Amazon was to say what are their two shows that they need to protect at all means, and the two are going to be The Boys because it's their biggest show, and Marvelous Miss Maisel because that's their like award winner, you know? That's their critical success. So it's like, yeah, it's definitely going to continue on, and I'm excited for where it's going. It was a good season.
Yes.
Gave a lot of closure to some stuff, gave us some new questions, so that's everything it needed to do, and it did it. And I'm glad it didn't try to stretch out, you know, and not give us closure.
Yeah, me too. Same.
So that's it. That's it for The Boys discussion. We won't be talking about that for a while. And next week we're going to be talking about Lovecraft Country. So we were talking about The Boys and Lovecraft Country kind of concurrently. We're not going to be doing that obviously right now. The reason why we separated The Boys and Lovecraft Country is because we had our 275th last week, and we just said, hey, the way this lays out, it makes more sense to do one episode finishing The Boys and one episode finishing Lovecraft Country. So next week we'll be talking about the last 3 episodes of Lovecraft Country and finishing that out as well. And the week after that, I already mentioned, we're going to be talking about the effects of COVID-19 on the entertainment industry. But that's it. So here's what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. On Wednesday, October 14th, the Baroness von Sketch Show comes to IFC. On Thursday, October 15th, Star Trek Discovery returns to CBS All Access. On Friday, October 16th, Marvel's Hellstrom returns or comes to Hulu. We talked about this a lot last week on this section, that it's kind of a weird positioned show. It's officially called Marvel's Hellstrom, but the trailers don't show Marvel at all. We talked about that a bunch last week, though, so we won't repeat that.
Yes. I don't want to go over that again.
Sunday, October 25th, The Undoing miniseries comes to HBO. On Monday, September 26th, Temple comes to Spectrum. On Thursday, October 29th, Deutschland 89 comes to Sundance. On Friday, October 30th, The Mandalorian comes to Disney+. We will be discussing season 2 of The Mandalorian. And on Sunday, November 1st, Roadkill comes to PBS. So that's it. That's what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Already mentioned next week we're talking about the last 3 episodes of Lovecraft Country. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best in genre television.